A prayer to our goddess Roxy for giving us this time of peace. Never forget to go down and do your prayer for peace. I love having that little segment that they actually include at the very end there, him going down there to his little altar. And this is something that I covered way back in the skip content for it when he first had the house kind of renovated. Yeah, that was one little segment that was down in the basement that he had like especially made by this craftsman. There was a lot of stuff that he had done in that house that was a little bit weird to the guy. But he did it. It's like there's a genius to it. He's like, oh, I want to kind of do this whole thing. And he ends up putting together. And yeah, that was part of it. That was the little altar down there. Now, technically, it is sort of kind of an altar where he feels the spirit of both Sylphiette and Roxy's in there. But yes, the holy relic is down there. The precious holy relic is down there. It's so good, so good. But yes, episode 3 of season 3. What a really good episode. Once again, still doing a good job of the pacing overall of this adaptation. Only 2 chapters covered in this episode, which is pretty crazy. Again, I'm hoping they keep to that and don't start rushing through things, but there was still quite a bit that was skipped in this little segment. We're going to get into all that as usual for these videos. These are my impressions videos, but also we do skip content as well. So if you want my thoughts overall of the episode scene by scene, plus again, getting all those juicy bits that unfortunately the anime decides to skip, this is the place to be. So let's just jump right into it and open the episode with just Rudeus waking up to the goddess Roxy. Very quickly realizing don't disgrace her. Don't disrespect the fact that her presence is here with you. Really goofy little bit here. They get into a little bit the fact that, yes, they agreed that they were not going to make Roxy officially his second wife until Sylphie gave birth. That was sort of the agreement that came into it. It was a lot to do with Roxy herself not wanting to butt in there. Of course, in the adjustment of having Lucy's arrival, of course, Roxy is kind of stepping in there and taking the place of Sylphie. And yeah, he did feel that Roxy this entire time was kind of anxious for this whole situation. A lot of what we get into with these chapters is Roxy sort of feeling that she's not supposed to be there. And it was kind of something we're getting into with the last volume, with the last season, is Roxy almost feeling like she's, invading Sylphie's territory. But at the same time, Sylphie's very welcoming of her. Anyways, due to the fact that Roxy is very anxious during this time, Rudeus is trying to, go above and beyond in bed for her to make her feel very comfortable and very happy. Says that his jaw hurts because he was working so hard. But it notes here about like the difference with Roxy compared to Sylphie and the fact that Roxy kept asking questions the entire time. He was employing a lot of what he learned, in his time with Sylphie, with Roxy to try to make sure that she has a really good time. But there's like this element of like Roxy herself is very studious even when she's in bed, asking questions step by step by like, am I doing this right? What am I supposed to be doing now? Like she's just constantly trying to make sure that she's doing the right job. Anyways, yes, he wakes her up, got to wake her up quickly because she's got to get to her first day as a professor. Taking the time to admire her butt and everything like that. She even at some point apologizes because she scratched his back. And he's like, don't worry about it. It's like a badge of honor for him. He's perfectly happy with having scratches on his back. And he's considering that she was thinking the same thing because she didn't even consider healing him. She's like, she wanted to leave the scratches on Rudeus. She could have easily come over there and immediately healed. Because like she touches his back and says, apologizes. She could have easily healed, but she didn't. But yeah, this whole segment right here was great in the anime. Unfortunately, of course, not having her, get up out of bed and having her butt in full view, but she was still gorgeous. Roxy's still gorgeous. Of course, she's getting ready for her first day at the job, so she asks if she's looking good, and he's like, yeah, you're looking great. If anybody wants to argue, they're stupid. But this is where in the book, in the novel, we kind of go back in time. It's unfortunate that in the anime, they kind of just like skim over the fact that he presented Roxy to everybody. But in the novel, it goes back several months to the point where Roxy asks Rudeus, hey, I want to be professor. I got a lot of time on my hands. He kind of knows the fact that, yes, she is an adventurer. And so she's like very good at a lot of things. She could have like any job that she wants. She's that good. Although she's not very good at specifically housework. So she's trying to find somewhere else to be. I mean, technically in their household, they got Lilia, they got Aisha, they got plenty of people to do the work in the house. So, try to find something else that she can do. And there's something that she's always kind of dreamed about doing, which is being a professor. So she asks, hey, would it be okay if I start working at the university? Which he's like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. There was a little bit of a hesitancy here for Roxy because up until now, up until that moment, she's been sort of Rudeus' left hand because he lost the hand to the Hydra, and she's sort of been there to kind of help him. If he has balance issues, eating, all this kind of stuff. She's just constantly at his side, constantly helping him, being his other hand. So there was a little bit of a hesitancy there. There's even a moment later on when he gets his prosthetic hand that she apologizes and says, I'm sorry I was so worked up in trying to get this job as a professor. I didn't think about, the fact that you were going to need me and that you went off and had to get another glove in order to replace me. She felt a little bad, like almost like he got the glove just because he was no longer to have her at his side. But yes, he knows that she's an amazing teacher. Given her talents, it would be criminal to keep her just locked up in that place. He needs to get her out there so that everybody can enjoy her wonderful teaching. But yeah, with this, Rudy suggests that they go meet with Vice Principal Genius, which of course is Roxy's old master. So she's like, oh yeah, he's Vice Principal now? Yeah, he was my old master, actually. Which is, yes, of course, something that's going to be a little bit of a pause for her, that they, of course, left on bad terms. Roxy told him that his master was pompous, prideful, full of a man. But for Rudius, this guy is like actually really nice and, diligent. So he probably assumes that, since the moment that Roxy met him and that he was this pompous fool, at some point he's changed. So he's like figuring it's going to be fine. You're going to meet with him. Everything's going to be perfectly fine. The past is probably in the past. Which is, I have to admit, this is kind of funny because legit, like last week upon recording of this, I was doing the manga series, Roxy Gets Serious, and they had the whole fallout from, Genius and Roxy. So I got to see like at least the manga's perspective of that whole scenario there and how they had that falling out between the two of them. But yeah, so we cut over to Rudius bringing Roxy to go meet Genius, and immediately upon seeing Roxy, he kind of had a little bit of a grimace. He had a little bit of a grimace. But I do like this. They do technically have this scene at the current time in the anime, getting into the, Genius, the moment that he sees Roxy. There's a little bit of a hesitancy there, but he still greets her. And from Roxy's perspective, it's really this element of, having a little bit of a hesitancy there because of their history together, but having sort of this new desire and this newfound sort of perspective on, being a teacher to somebody else. She, through her experience with Rudius, has sort of, recognized the difficulty there. And yes, also at this point, having grown a lot. So she even here is willing to admit to Genius, yeah, I was a little bit arrogant back then. I'm sorry about that. Even saying that she wants to be a professor, and he's going, I thought, you thought that teachers were useless. And she's like, no, I've changed my perspective, obviously. I see sort of a value to being somebody's teacher. And it's cute, though, because, yeah, at some point, Rudius realized that, the two of them kind of have a little bit of an understanding with each other. He's making little jabs at her, and she's smiling back. Okay, maybe they have some sort of mutual respect that has been developed. Maybe I should just leave the room, let them be. So after Rudius excuses himself, he heads over to Zenoba's laboratory. I understand why they skipped this, but it is unfortunate that they skipped this. The moment that Rudius gets to Zenoba's laboratory, he just swings open the door and yells, "Breaking news, Zenoba, I'm back!" And he finds Zenoba alone in his laboratory, straddling a life-size mannequin with an ecstatic expression. And Rudius wondered what emotions were going on in this guy's mind right now. He's like, no, never mind, I do know all too well. He just closes the door, waits about like 10 minutes, hearing clattering inside, until eventually he hears a voice call out, "I'm ready." And he throws open the door again. "Breaking news, Zenova, I'm back." Oh, how splendid. If it's not my beloved master Rudius. And they just literally embrace like nothing happened. It's like just two bros. They're like, we didn't see nothing. Nothing happened. End up finding out that, yeah, Julia and Ginger were out shopping. And so apparently this was like his one moment of like alone time that Rudius completely ruined. Because this guy wanted to get his little jollies off on his statues. It's so wrong. It is so wrong. I understand why the anime cut this, but still, it was hilarious seeing this whole little bit here, and Zenoba just having his own little alone time with his mannequins. I mean, they technically showed it in the OP of the last season, so it's present. This is just like a full on, not just a bust. This is a full on thing that he is literally straddling. It's crazy, but anyways, yeah, they kind of just converse for a little bit. Eventually, they get into talking about the Hydra itself that he fought and how it was immune to magic, and yeah, that all kind of led him to losing his hand and, of course, losing more things. But yeah, eventually, at some point, discussion gets into talking about, yes, his new achievement that Zenoba has, which is the prosthetic hand, this little glove. Immediately kind of demonstrates how it works. And yes, the reason for this glove was for the sake of Zenoba himself to be able to craft his figurines. His life is all around the idea of crafting the figurines. And so if he can create something that will allow him to do it, this is the thing that he has developed over 6 months. There is definitely a admiration that Rudius has this moment. Like, Zenoba's saying, it's all thanks to you that we started to study this automaton, and me and Cliff, we worked really hard, and this is the thing that we produced. And Rudius himself is like, I never told them to really do anything, and this is something that they pulled off in 6 months. This is something very, very incredible. But it also does get into sort of what Rudius, sees in Zenoba. This is somebody that his life, again, is around these figurines, and thus having that life passion. This is all that he really cares about. This is his dream. This is his hope, is creating these things. Of course, he's going to put a lot of effort in that whole thing. So that was the whole idea behind the glove. I will admit, when I read this whole segment right here, I'm like, that's extremely convenient, Refugin. Like, you legit went from him losing his hand to literally a chapter later, boop, here's a glove that just somehow fits right on your hand, and it works perfectly to replace your hand. Like, we couldn't allow Rudius to have a lack of hand for a little bit longer. We had to literally have, for some reason, while he was gone, Zenoba happened to create the thing that remedies his lack of a hand. It was a little bit cheesy, but it makes sense to what Zenoba's doing. Again, he needs something that will force his strength to not destroy what he's working on. That's why Zenoba is working on this. This is the thing that is going to allow him to do very delicate work in the future. Currently, he breaks things. Currently, his strength is incredible. So working with delicate things is not really something that he can do. This glove was going to do that. This was this glove that was going to essentially hamper down his strength and allow him to touch things like that. It's really cool. Again, and there's a lot of emphasis here that, of course, it has feeling as well. Rudius, even in the anime, mentioned the fact that he's able to feel the hand, feel the fingers. This is an important thing because if you're working and sculpting on things, he's going to be able to need to touch it. He's going to be able to feel it, so he knows the texture and what he's touching. So it's all important, even if, again, a little convenient. A little bit convenient. Yeah. Rudius, seeing that he had a smile of a genuine joy on his face. His happiness was obvious and infectious. If he could control his strength, he could make figurines himself. He found a way to create things he loved most. It was hard to imagine what this meant to him. Yeah, Zenoba's super happy about this creation, and he's so willing to give it to Rudius. Now, he does mention later on that, yes, with you and Cliff, we can easily make another one. But this was like an important thing for Zenoba. This is something he's been working on for a long time for the sake of something that he loves. So it kind of shows a little bit of a willingness for him to help out Rudius with the situation. Of course, with this creation, it does get sort of the gears rolling in Rudius's head, kind of curious as to what sort of is the potential of something like this. This is something that they are currently researching. There's even a question later on, should they continue to work on, researching this prosthetic hand, or should they transition back into focusing on the automaton? They're continuing that research there. He ultimately does recognize the fact that, yes, this prosthetic hand, how much mana it requires from Rudius to function it, this is something that will drain Zenoba within, I think he says, like 2 hours. So it's not something that currently it's, very feasible to use. He's more like setting the idea that potentially putting on the back burner to focus on the actual automaton. But still, even for Rudius right here, the gears are spinning because he's recognizing that there is a significant use for this. That because, healing magic specifically is rare in high tiers. You need a very skilled healer to be able to restore a lost limb. That's why he has a lack of a hand right now. Healing magic doesn't repair that. You have to be extremely highly skilled to be able to regenerate a lost limb. Yes, it takes less if you have a severed limb and you're able to put it back and heal it, but for a absolute lack of the hand itself, you can't just boom, healing magic on it. You need somebody that's very skilled. So in acknowledging that there's not really anybody really readily available, and for those that are available, they're very expensive. Most of them are down at Millis. So you have to go find somebody and, again, pay them a lot, and a lot of them aren't going to give you the time of day. There is a significant need for something like this in the medical field, prosthetics especially, because most people have to use like pegs or, have nothing for their hands themselves. And these things can be very expensive. So to have the availability of these prosthetic hands, a working hand that you can sell, you can see sort of the desire for something like this in the market. At the same time, also acknowledging that that'll probably piss off a lot of people in Millis in the medical field, that he would have something like this that he can provide people rather than to go to these places to get their limbs restored. But anyways, that's when they get to the name of the prosthetic hand. He notes that it's Zenoba and Cliff's work, so Zalef prosthesis. I personally think that Rudy's naming schemes are usually pretty stupid, but hey, they accept it. They're all for it. He's like, you didn't include our name. Doesn't matter. It's your guys' creation. But yeah, it wraps up the whole introduction of the prosthesis by Rudius acknowledging the fact that he needs to practice with this hand a little bit longer so that he can get very precise with it. All for the goal of being able to gently squeeze Roxy and Sylphie's chest. Oh. Rudius is always going to be Rudius. After this, they went on talking about various things, dolls, figurines that Rudius seen on the Begric continent. Zenoba obviously absorbing all of that, happily. Zenoba notes that Julie has finished the figurine of that certain gentleman, which he assumes is probably the reserved figurine that she's working on. Rudius then goes into another matter that he needs to address, which is introducing Zenoba to somebody special. Yes, Roxy. And at that moment, a knock comes at the door, and Rudius welcomes her to come inside and says that she can literally walk in any room that she wants in this entire campus. She's like, I don't think you can decide that. But no, I love this because Rudius introduced her as Roxy M. Greyrat, my master in magic. Immediately, he starts trembling. He raises his shaking arms above his head and bellows out an "Oh!" before he leaps in the air like a frog and drops flat on the ground, prostrating himself with his hands stretched out in front. Immediately, Roxy's like, stop. Please stop groveling. You're the prince of an entire kingdom. You shouldn't be groveling to me. And Rudy's like, yes, he should be. Everybody acknowledges the wonders of this lady. Again, let's go back here, and this is going to be important for later on. Let's go back here. Remember what one of the biggest incidents that happened in the second season around Roxy was this figurine that was broken. And what Rudius put Linnea and Presenta through, and yes, the fear that Zenoba had of Rudius back then, these people are terrified of anything disrespecting Roxy. She is this goddess to Rudius. They fear that if they disrespect Roxy, they're dead. They take Roxy extremely serious. So yeah, he's literally going to jump up in the air like a frog and land straight on his face. It's so dorky. And Rudius like here's like, it's just perfectly natural that he's doing this. And she's like, stop it. Stop it, Rudius. It's so good. It's so good. It is very unfortunate the anime skips this whole segment. They literally just give like this little like slideshow and show this brief moment of him groveling in front of her. It's fine though. Anyways, after their conversations, Rudius leaves with Roxy. As they're walking, he's sort of contemplating a lot of things, that Roxy's going to start working as a professor. They need to celebrate that. There's also the need to celebrate their marriage. They also have his sisters are turning 10. You also have like another family member showing up here soon, which at this point again would be Lucy. He kind of just figured at this point, let's just kind of consolidate them all together. I mean, technically back here, Paul was, writing a letter about having a big party once they all got back as well. So he figures, hey, this is probably work out to kind of have it all at once. As they're walking, though, I do like this little moment where she is acknowledging again the prosthetic hand. She's kind of feeling a little bit bad that she's, rushed to doing this whole professor thing, and she feels like he had to get the prosthetic hand because she's not going to be at his side, and that she's kind of forced him to have to, find a replacement quickly. But ultimately, in the end, this is Rudius wanting her to sort of put herself first. Don't worry about me. I'm going to be perfectly fine. I want her to seek out something that she wants. This is obviously something that she's really excited about. Girl, just focus on that. It's fine. They then go on to introduce her to several other people. They go to Linnea, Presenta, Ariel, Luke, Nanahoshi being the important ones. Went to Cliff as well, but unfortunately, again, he was he was in his laboratory having some moments with Ellen Elise. They even mentioned again that later on when they get in the classroom that he's like, why didn't you come by and say hi to me? He's like, dude, you and Ellen Elise were having a moment. He said the reactions of each of the individuals were varied. Lenny and Persenna responded in an amusing way. Upon getting a whiff of Roxy's scent, they both twitched to attention with fear in their faces. As they stood meekly with tails between their legs, Rudius introduced her as his beloved teacher, to which they both promptly bowed their heads. Perhaps beast folks are quick to recognize people they shouldn't mess with. Their instincts were right on the money this time. Again, like I said earlier, it's because they smell they smell Roxy. They smell literally this holy relic. They know who Roxy is, this goddess of Rudius. They're terrified. It's so funny. He says Ariel and Luke, on the other hand, were surprisingly oblivious. The first words out of Ariel's mouth was, "I see you remember to stop by after your trip, at least." Now, the whole thing here is that she's upset that he didn't come by before he left to go to the Bagrat continent. And she could have offered some sort of assistance to him, but he didn't. And yes, him technically acknowledging that he did go a little bit ill-prepared, this is a little bit of a, gut punch. Now, upon introducing Roxy to them, they were surprised and looked at each other. Rudius figured that they were surprised that such a young magician would be taking on the role of facility here. Still, Ariel greeted Roxy politely, without a hint of confusion in her voice. Now, Nahoshi was somewhat worse for wear. Maybe because she caught a cold or something. She was coughing like crazy. When she seen Rudius, she smiled in relief, muttering, "Now we can get back to researching." Upon introducing Roxy as one of the new professors here, she responded with a disinterested acknowledgement. Feeling her response was a little too curt, he elaborated on Roxy's virtues and talents. Sadly, Nanahoshi just grimaced and called him a cradle robber. It's like the entire time she just doesn't care. Like, she's probably working on her stuff over here, and he's just like talking about how great Roxy is and stuff, and she's like, whatever, cradle robber. Rudius figures it was too much to expect an ordinary high schooler to grasp Roxy's greatness. It was dorky. It's dorky. Again, it would have been fun to have this stuff adapted, but it's kind of understandable. It's a lot of kind of comedy bit stuff. Now, here's the problem, though. After all these introductions, and they get into a little bit of this in the anime when they first come back to school, but right here it's happening as Rudius is introducing her to everybody. That she gets a little bit upset here. The fact that he's overly praising her, that he's constantly raising her up on a pedestal, and at some point she gets mad. She literally starts frowning and jabs her finger at him and says, "Okay, there you go again. Are you teasing me or something?" She's upset the fact that he's constantly praising her when she's not that great. There is a significant element here where he's overselling her. He says, "Don't be ridiculous. My respect and admiration for you is real as it gets." She says, "Oh, for crying out loud. Whenever you start calling me teacher, I can't help but get the feeling that you're messing with me." There's an element here where he's overselling her. There's an element here where she feels like she's not worthy of that praise. But the more important thing here, obviously, is the fact that, yes, putting that all aside, you're introducing me to your friends, and you told them that I'm your teacher, but you never did once mention that I'm your wife. Hello? 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 I mean, technically, yes, back there, when she was introduced to Zenoba, he does say, "Roxy M. Grey Rat." He is introducing her as a Grey Rat, but there is an element here of like, hello, wife, not teacher. He realized how badly he screwed up. It was possibly something that he couldn't fix. She was right. She wasn't Roxy McGurdia anymore. She was Roxy M. Grey Rat. She had the right to be furious. He just wanted to emphasize her greatness more than anything. A side of him thinks that she's too good to be married to the likes of him. While she wanted to be introduced as his wife. This was a huge blunder. Yes, she was his second wife, but that didn't make her any less of his wife. They'd be spending the rest of their life together, and maybe even having children. So in apology, he offers to go introduce himself to her parents. And she's like, "No, that wouldn't be necessary. We can get to that eventually." And yeah, he technically acknowledges here that, yeah, eventually they're going to have to go, see Rowan and Rokari, go travel to the Demon Continent. And potentially now they have access to magic circles now. Somebody has a little map with all these little magic teleportation circles. Maybe we can possibly get one to go to the Demon Continent at some point. But there was no rushing it. They could probably have like a family trip at some point. But that's where we cut over to literally the second scene of the anime. Yes, Rudy waking up and walking into the living room with Roxy in tow. And, spots Sylphie over here with little Lucy. Little cute little Lucy over there. Says that she's only a few months old, but she's strong and healthy, though a bit quiet. Lucy didn't cry much at all. For a while, he was afraid that she was sick or had a physical problem. However, Sylphie just called him a worrywart. Rudius didn't remember being so jumpy when his siblings were born. It was a bit difficult with your own child. Once Lilia mentioned that she reminded her of Rudius at that age, that gave him a start, obviously. The word reincarnation flashed through his mind. He was a pretty crappy person in his previous life. He was worried that Lucy would be a reincarnation of some good-for-nothing moron from Japan. That gnawed at him for a while, ultimately resorting to speaking to his baby in Japanese and English to see if she reacted at all. It was probably comical to anyone walking by, saying, "You figured it out by now, right? This is a parallel universe. You are my sunshine. I am a pen." He remembered Aisha snickering at him from the shadows. He ultimately decided that she probably wasn't a reincarnation. She'd just smile and babble incoherently. It was possible that she was hiding her true nature, but he didn't know many grown-ups that can keep up imitating a baby for this long. Even if that was the case, it was kind of cute to imagine someone desperately pretending to be an infant. Lucy was definitely cute. He could sit by her cradle and never get bored watching her. All in all, he didn't care if it was reincarnation. He was going to take good care of her either way. Paul had done the same for me, after all. I like that last line. I like that last line. Even though I was a reincarnation, even though I acted all weird and just like, what? Paul took care of me. I'm going to do the same thing for Lucy, even if she is some good-for-nothing reincarnation. It was cute. Another moment that I'm like, I kind of wish that they kind of fit this in with the anime. Instead, in the anime, he just comes in there and goes, "Oh, she's getting really strong. So, Zenith." Oh my gosh, that was a little bit of a, that sucks. Lucy does look cute in the anime though, little adorables. But yeah, this is where we have Roxy walk in and Sylphie makes sure that she was treated right last night. He treated right? Rudius acknowledges here that Sylphie and Roxy were a bit awkward, but not hostile. It was obvious they were trying to be respectful and considerate of each other. To Rudius, it seemed like both of them wanted to make this work. He realized they would be leaning on Sylphie a lot. Her open-mindedness was the only thing that made this arrangement possible. And yeah, that was acknowledged back when, he first introduced Roxy. Norn was pissed. Norn was pissed. But Sylphie was like, "It's good. Welcome, Roxy. I can tell in your eyes that you two are in love. Welcome to the family." At this point, he doesn't go to Zenith. Actually, at this point, Aisha walks in the door in the novel, singing her really crappy song, "Breakfast, breakfast, time to get some breakfast." He acknowledged his point that, Aisha is a genius, but all geniuses have their weak points, and so apparently singing is hers. But with the coming of breakfast, Lilia goes off and gets Zenith and brings her in. Zenith stepped in the room, pausing to stare at Rudius for a moment, then sat at the table. Months had passed, but Zenith's memories hadn't returned. She was changing in small, noticeable ways, though. In particular, she acted very different when Norn was around, stroking her daughter's head and trying to feed her from her own plate. Almost like she thought Norn was 2 or 3 years old. Norn seemed unsettled at times, but accepted Zenith's attentions. Rudius assumed that she had mixed feelings about it. She was still at the age to be attached to her mother, or getting ready to rebel against her. Either way, it's a period of life where a relationship with a parent feels important. Norn understood Zenith's condition, and she was clearly trying to put her mother's feelings first. He never expected that kind of maturity from her a few years ago, but it seemed people do change. It was hard to know what it meant on Zenith's side. Did she feel a connection with her daughter, or was it instincts? Regaining memory slowly, it seemed it was best to wait and see what happened. Right in the heart. This is stuff that really hurt for me in the novel series, and it's painful to see it animated too. Like her coming in there and just reaching over to Norn. This little baby girl right here. Completely unfortunately ignoring Rudius. There's almost like this question mark is if she's sort of reverted back. For me personally, I've experienced people that have some sort of significant issue in the brain, and what it does is it almost like reverts them back to like earlier stage in their life, because like all these memories have been sort of wiped out. It goes back to this like period of time. It's almost like they literally jump in time. Like there's this revert back in time, and thus they see their child as like very younger than what they actually are. It's so painful to see. But yes, after this, they get into talking about the fact that they decided to hire a wet nurse, and that lady is named Suzanne. For those that don't remember Suzanne was part of, the party that they had back in, season 2, part 1. The party that he had with, Sarah and all them. That's Suzanne. That's Suzanne. Apparently she's living in the neighborhood, and yes, she was a mother. She became a mother, and so she's working as a wet nurse for Rudius, for their child. But from there, we cut over to the school where they're going there for their first day at school. We just acknowledge here that he's immediately greeted by the new students. Seems like he feels like because, maybe because he's a father of a household now, that he's the head of the household. Maybe he's exuding some sort of aura. And that's when Linnea and Priscilla confront him, though. This is where we kind of press the idea of Rudeus eventually, screaming out to everybody in the anime that he, loves both Roxy and Sylphiette. But there is more of an element here where, yes, Linnea and Priscilla are questioning the fact that Rudeus has gone out and brought home a second wife. That somebody has kind of, cut in line right here. They kind of talk about the idea they're going to go out and find themselves somebody, and Sylphie kind of bids them good luck. But Roxy sort of takes it a different way. She actually apologizes to both of them because she feels like she's cut in line. That these two are like, well, you went off and got somebody else before us, what the heck? And Roxy's like, I'm so sorry, I can't believe that I cut in line right here. And then both of them actually like panic, like, oh no, it's perfectly fine. You're okay. Yeah, you're okay. You could do that, it's fine. But as more shifts into them kind of acknowledging that Roxy herself is going to replace Sylphie, and that Sylphie should, get in there and get your seconds as quick as possible. Get your second kid or whatever as fast as possible because Roxy's going to replace you. And that's kind of leads him to embracing Sylphie and then embracing Roxy and making that declaration in front of everybody. It's goofy. It's a goofy little bit. Getting a little public display of affection. Sylphie never really likes it. Sylphie never really likes it. Roxy seems to be much more open to PDA, but Sylphie never likes the PDA. There is one little interesting note here about specifically Sylphie's style. And this is kind of an odd thing because there was a moment where after, it was brought to Ariel's attention that Rudeus was going to marry Sylphie, she allowed Sylphie to start dressing normal because she was always dressed in like, the pants and everything to look like a boy, look like Fitz. And so, Ariel's like, hey, start dressing like a girl. You're a wife now. But it seems like she's still wearing the pants at this point. Mainly why she doesn't change because she just doesn't feel like she'd look good in a girl's uniform. And they kind of come to agreement there that, at least grow out your hair. At least grow out your hair. Which I agree. I think she looks much better with longer hair. Anyways, he parts ways with them, heads to homeroom with Linnea and Priscilla in tow. Acknowledge the fact that he'd never lay hands on them. But this is the point where they bring up the fact that there's a lot of rumors going around about Rudeus, that he flew off to the Demon Continent to fight one of the 7 great powers and sacrifice his own hand to win. This is where he kind of panics and realizes that it's the two of them that are going around and spreading a bunch of rumors. Now, yes, he acknowledges the fact that rumors are going to spread either way, but he doesn't like the fact that he's going to put himself under, the bullseye of some 7 great powers. He's afraid that they're going to inflate how great he is and talk about how he scared off some 7 great power, and that 7 great power is going to want to come over and kill him. He's immediately thinking of Orsted. You're going to get me in trouble with Orsted. He says that some of the rumors claim that he battled Super to death. Others that he faced 100 monsters alone. Some claim he successfully casted a forbidden ancient spell, losing his hand in the process. Fullmetal Alchemist. With them not sounding credible, he assumed they disappeared before long. Anyways, that's where we get to pretty much what the anime kind of covered, that they, have class. Cliff comes in, gets upset that he didn't come by to say hi. Eventually, Roxy comes in the room, revealing the fact that, yes, that's his second wife. There's a moment here where Rudeus acknowledges that it seems that Cliff already knew. He knew that this was the case. It's just that he wanted to hear it from Rudeus. He's prodding Rudeus because he wants Rudeus to admit that he's brought on a second wife. But it's nice, though. I've always loved Cliff, and this is one of those moments where you understand sort of his frustrations. He's upset that Rudeus did this after he blessed his wedding. You came to me for blessings, and I blessed that the two of you were going to be together, that Sylphie was the one for you. And then he went off and got another woman. But there's more of an element here of, don't treat women like collectibles. You're not going to go around and just grab up all these girls because they're collectibles. You have to have time to treat them right. Treat them properly. But there's also an element that he gets into is the fact that, yes, Norn herself, he's been running into Norn at the church on a regular basis, and she's noted the fact that she really likes seeing the relationship that Rudeus had with Sylphie. She kind of wishes that one day she can have that same relationship. But he's also noting here that Norn now no longer has a father. You've returned home, and that's great, and she's happy about that, but she no longer has a father. You have to kind of step in there. You got to start acting grown up. It's funny because, yeah, he asks how Norn reacted, and he's like, yeah, she was not happy about it. And he's like, yes, of course she was upset. And she probably forgave you because she's afraid that you'd kick her out. Again, there's an element here where she has nobody else And she potentially probably stepped down and didn't push any further because she has to stay there. She's afraid of you kicking her out of your life. But no, what's funny is that this whole like preaching from Cliff, it's happening in the middle of the class. It's funny because the anime, it cuts over to them being in, Zenoba's laboratory. But no, this happened in the middle of class. And literally everybody, like Professor Samson, who Roxy is replacing because they're going to be going off. Professor Samson, Roxy, they're just standing there. And after, Rudius looks over to Roxy, and she's standing there the whole time, looking extremely uncomfortable. And Rudius responds by blowing her a kiss. And she gives off a little giggle before, like, scowling at him. It was cute. But yes, after this whole incident, things continue on as normal. He's checking on Zenoba and Cliff. He's dropping by to help out Nanahoshi. He's using his free time to work on his book, as well as study the magic absorption stones. Now, again, a reminder for folks, back when he was, in the labyrinth, they fought that massive Hydra. And the Hydra itself was blocking magic. And the way that it was blocking was his scales. The scales on the Hydra itself was absorbing the magic. And so after they killed the Hydra, Geese was like, setting up them to have some people go down there and get all the treasure and stuff out. And they collected a whole bunch of these. And so Rudius is currently studying that and how it works and seeing if he can possibly use it. Rudius had a lot to occupy his time, making him nostalgic for the days that he could devote to a single task or two. His time immediately after class did change, though. Previously helping Norn study, now has shifted to helping her use the sword. He was afraid that it would affect her academic results, but she promised that she'd work hard to stay on track. We didn't cut forward to one evening when Rudius is walking home with Sylphie. Normally, Roxy would come with them, or potentially Norn as well. During the time they're walking home, Sylphie suggests that Rudius joins the student council, at which point he's like, no, I'm sorry. I don't have much free time. They end up getting home, and that's when we have the scene that's in the anime, which I'm so glad they actually kept it. Now, they unfortunately completely gutted what happens after this. But yes, I'm glad at least we got the scene of him coming home and Aisha rushing up there and doing the whole trope scene. Would you like a bath? Would you like some dinner? Or perhaps me? You tickle. It was so cute. When I read that in the novel, I'm a big old smile on my face. It's such a cute little moment. I love every scene with Rudius and Aisha. It's such a cute moments between the two of them. But yes, unfortunately, like I said, they did skip a whole segment here, which I guess I understand why it's skipped. I see why it's skipped. It's one of those moments of like, it's not like significant to the story, and it is very questionable. But yes, Rudius goes off to the bath, which is funny because he notes that when he gets in there, the bath's not ready. So that pretty much means that the only option, because dinner's not ready, the bath's not ready, the only option was Aisha. There was only one option in that whole thing there. But yes, he goes up to the bath. It talks about the fact that, yes, technically whenever they do set up the bath, they typically have at least 2 people going to the bath. This time, Aisha follows him in. He says that she's 11, but lacks any sense of shame. He had to correct her to cover up with a towel, claiming it would be polite. She agreed, but Rudius wished that she learned from her sister a bit, which of course would be Norn. Norn's a lot more, reserved in covering up herself. But yes, he said it was nice to have a little sister, that she would wiggle her way between his legs and demand to wash her back and rinse her head. It was a good thing that she was his sister, and also just a scrawny kid, or he might end up with another wife at his hands. If Roxy or Sylphie did the same stunt, he'd be confident he'd lose his control in seconds. It's, again, right here, it's acknowledging the fact that Rudius has no sexual desire for Aisha. This is his sister, and it seems like there's like this massive barrier that keeps him from ever having some sort of desire for her. Even though, again, what it got into when he first was reintroduced to his sister back when he was going to rescue her, it was this factor that, yes, Aisha herself was like the perfect like little sister trope character. Something that in his previous life was like this sought after thing. But now that he's in front of her, now he's in front of his sister, nothing's happening. He has no urges whatsoever for her. He settled in for some pleasant family bonding with Aisha, the two of them washing each other while Aisha told him the events of the day. Mostly trivial little things. Lucy did something adorable. Zenith helped out with the weeding. Lilia dozed off next to the window. Aisha planted something new in the garden, that sort of stuff. He did entrust Aisha with the seed rice, promised to give it a shot when the weather got warmer. She was a genius, so he was optimistic that he'd have a private supply of rice before too long. Aisha, the rice farmer. Following this, the whole family had their little meal afterwards. As a family, they relaxed. Rudius taught Aisha a little bit of magic. Roxy went to her room to prepare for tomorrow's classes. Sylphie juggled attending to Lucy while practicing her own magic. Dillo would wander to Rudius now and then and get a little attention. Aisha was responsible for taking care of him, and she trained him thoroughly. He started acting like a loyal guard dog. Yeah, we see that in the anime. He's literally got his own little doggy house off to the side that Aisha's taking care of him. He looks so much smaller than I imagined, though. Like, the anime makes him out to be really small, but this is something that, like, Roxy rides him to work on a regular basis, so I guess it's about the size that he would need to be for Roxy to ride him. Afterwards, Rudius welcomed Sylphie up into the room. Picking her up, he carried her princess style to the bed. After that, they enjoyed some private time. Of course, after she falls asleep, he heads off to the basement, glancing back before opening a hidden door. Inside, his altar with holy idols enshrined inside. A bundle of cloth to the uninitiated. But he knew the divine spirits of Roxy and Sylphie dwelt within them. Tonight, like every other night, he offered his prayers of gratitude. Yeah, technically the other thing that is in there is the little piece of cloth from the bed sheet, you know, when he and Sylphie first had sex. So technically both of those are supposed to be in there. But yeah, that's the end of the episode. Pretty, again, significant amount of stuff that was unfortunately skipped in the anime adaptation. Some of this stuff might end up being sort of covered in a way in the next episode. I'm pretty sure they're probably going to get into him training Norn. I mean, technically, like stuff like the Norn situation was covered at the end of last season, that he started training Norn, but this is sort of the reason why. At some point, she came to him and said, hey, can you teach me the sword? She wants to be able to wield the sword, and he's like, yeah, sure, but as long as it doesn't affect your other grades. She's like, yeah, I'm gonna make sure that it doesn't do that. So there's some of the stuff that's sort of, you know, glossed over or kind of mentioned, but overall, it was a solid adaptation. Again, I'm liking the pacing. Despite the fact that it's kind of skipping a lot of stuff, it's at least, it doesn't feel like things are rushing forward. For those that have been, you know, watching Ascendance of Bookworm along with me, you'll notice that show for sure is just jumping around. Like, it just seems like every single scene change is probably like a month span jump. Here it's like, feels very much so like, you know, we're jumping from day to day and it's just going through what's happening. So it's good to see a lot of the characters again, though. Seeing Zenoba, Cliff, Lenny and Persenna, Nanahoshi over here coughing. Nanahoshi over here coughing. But, yeah, most importantly, Roxy. The beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Roxy. But anyways, that's my thoughts. Mostly just me talking about skip content, because I want to make sure I get all the skip content out there. Mostly me talking about skip content, but really good episode overall. Still looking pretty good. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it informative. If you did, hit the like button down below. If you'd like to support this channel, become a member. There's also a link to give a donation to the channel. I greatly appreciate you guys' support and all your kind words and all that stuff to help me get through burning through all this information and presenting it to you in a way that's at least entertaining and not just me reading the script. But until next time, until next week, y'all take care.